So first we started with Headcount, and Western Digital is a combination of 3 large companies, HDST, SanDisk, and Western Digital. And so each company, as you can imagine, had its own systems, its own business models, its own ways of storing data. And so we started out when our CHRO and the execs post the acquisition said, hey, we want to know what our headcount is. And we said, great. And then we started looking around for the data. And the first time that we pulled headcount, it took us 2 weeks. So we had to go out to every country and every system and pull it together. And then we put it in a spreadsheet, and they were like, wow, this is great. We've had nothing before this. And we said, well, we can definitely do better than this. So from there, we realized we needed a place to consolidate the data. And so we moved to a data warehouse. We combined the data from multiple systems, and at that point we were using SAP HANA. And now in a later version, the corporate standard is now Oracle Exadata, and so we have a cube within that environment. And so some of the data sources that we have combined together. We use Workday for our HCM. We've got ServiceNow, where we keep our contingent workforce. Taleo for our job requisitions and recruiting information. E-Trade, Equity Edge for stock. And we've got some payroll systems that are used for finance accruals. And so we've pulled this all together. And then once we had the warehouse, we're like, wow, great. We've got all this data. What can we do with it? And so we started taking a look at ways to visualize it. And so that was our start. So where did we go from there? Well, our first version, and we were very excited about this, was like, hey, guess what? It's not a spreadsheet. You can now see on a map where people are located, and we can show you spans and layers. We can do all kinds of things. So our first one was really focused on the executive audience, VP+, about 200 users. And it was an image-based homepage with the ability to slice the data, so you'd click on the image and it would pull up a whole series of dashboards behind each one. And we combined different kinds of things. Now, I do want to mention that all the data that you're going to see is from our test system, and it's based on NBA basketball players, in case you see some names that look familiar. Okay, so then where did we go from there? So with version 2, we focused on metrics. Oh, okay, great, we can visualize and the pictures are pretty, but how can we make this more useful for people? So we decided to focus on some key metrics. And we expanded our footprint. We provide access to all managers globally, our HR COEs and our HR business partners, about 5,000 users. So we went from 200 to 5,000, and we added a proxy access so that business partners could get in there and see the view of the exec they were supporting. We thought about things like trending, leading indicators, KPIs, and trying to put them right on the homepage. Okay, so we thought people would really use that, which we found was not so much the case. So for more information, the user can click on the tile, drill into the detail, and I'm going to go through a couple of screenshots of a few of these to show you what they look like. We added built-in help. You can see there's a question mark, the refresh date at the bottom, and we do refresh on a daily basis for some of our dashboards and weekly for others. And then you can click to get out to more information or systems. And so we've got some things that are embedded that really help. And so some of the things that we've got at this moment, we do a demographics dashboard. We've got turnover, hires, trending, promos, compensation, job recs, spans and layers, and employee journey surveys, right? And then you've got a lot of different ways of slicing the data as well. So now I'm going to show you a couple of views so you can see what that looks like. So first one is our headcount view. And You can select the data set to display through the filters on the left. So this is all custom design, and we set up, the first thing we did, our senior manager of people analytics set up first some templates. So let's make everything look the same. Let's give it all the same look and feel so that when people learn how to use this, the content in the middle pane will change, but the rest of it will be the same. And so that was the approach we took. So the first thing you can do is you can select the data set or your filters on the left-hand side. You can see at the top there's tabs that will take you through a series of views that show you different things. We've got video tutorial embedded, like 2 minutes on how to use it. There's a question mark. In some of them where we have measures, we've got those defined so people can understand, well, how are you calculating turnover? And then we've got employee counts so that when you filter the data, you've got an idea of what you're looking at. You're like, oh, I thought I was looking at the whole group, but oh no, I've only got 310 people here. And you've got the refresh date, and in this case, it's going to take you back to Workday because that's the relevant data source. Okay. So now let me go to the next one, turnover. So we put a lot of effort and focus on turnover. This is an area that's been of high interest and high importance to our executive staff. So in addition to the visualization, which you can view as, you can see there's rates, you can also look at counts, you can break out the data in about 20 different ways. You can take a look at different time periods. So we set it to quarterly by default, but if you want to look at annual or you want to look at monthly, you can do that as well. You can hover over the tan box on the upper left, and that's going to show you the 3 highest areas of turnover, right? So by location, by job family, and by tenure. So that was our attempt at trying to build in an insight. So you can click on each of the metrics and get down to more information, such as if you click on that, it can show you the employee detail, because we got a lot of requests for, hey, I'd like to be able to download this data. I want to see who the people are. And so there's a way to do that as well so that people can basically get down to the detail in Excel. And the exit survey is in the last 2 tabs. So what we tried to do was say, hey, here's a high-level view. Here's some key metrics. Here's some ways to drill into the data to find out what's happening, where is the highest attrition. And then it's like, okay, why is this happening? So what are the employees saying about why they're leaving? So that was our approach. We also put some trending in there to show are things increasing, decreasing, directionally where we're going. So it's a lot of functionality, but what I would say is that while some of our end users love it, the ones that are more data savvy, a lot of them find it a little daunting, like it's a little bit too much for them. So a view like this we found is best for analysts that can really dig in to surface the insights. And yeah, I'm going to talk about that a little bit in sort of my tips at the end. And so this one is on our exit survey, and this is one of our employee listening views. And so as you can see, there are tabs across the top to look at different things. And all of our surveys have an eNPS question, so a Net Promoter Score question. And we break out the surveys into dimensions, which is the average score of a series of questions on a specific topic. You can see that there. We also display the top 3 and bottom 3 results, and people seem to really like that. That's sort of, again, an attempt to get at some insights, like what do employees that are leaving feel good about, and what are some of the reasons why they might be leaving where the scores are lower. And so that's been quite popular. I think anything that we can do to surface insights is helpful. So I'll move on to, I got just a couple more views here. Job requisitions. And so you can see, again, we've got key metrics across the top. And our process is relatively complex. The requisitions start out for approval in Workday, and then the recruiting process happens in Taleo. So prior to this, there was no way to look at where are my recs and where are my posted jobs. And so now people can see that, whoops. And so that was a way that we were able to bring that all together for people. There's some metrics at the top, but like most views, you can select the data set that you want to look at and narrow things down. I'll move on to compensation. This one's pretty interesting. This is our baseball card view. And this is a way for managers to be able to compare the data of a selected employee with others within that family. So you can see the orange dot is the selected employee, and then in this case, we've got one other employee to compare to, but there would be other cases where maybe you've got lots more employees in that job, and you could compare where they sit in terms of OTE or on-target earnings. So, and then we break it out, salary, their short-term incentive, which is like a bonus plan, and then a long-term incentive, which is equity, and we've got the vesting schedule on the right-hand side. So you can see that there's a lot of information. Now, one of the things that worked really well is it's used by HRBPs when flight risk is identified to see if there are elements of compensation that might need to be adjusted. But we also found that the managers really like this during the compensation review cycle. So being able to tie it to a program that was underway really increased our adoption. So I have one more view here, and this is our D&I view. And so the thing that I wanted to note on this is that what we did is we pulled in, on the right-hand side, you can see the gender distribution. We pulled in external data sources. So this was all scraped from the web, what's publicly available. And so then our leaders can see where Western Digital compares to other companies in this space. Okay, so that's what I want to go into for that. So now I'm going to talk about, all right, so how do we build impact? And I love this image. It really shows you about how design is important, right? So there's the nice sidewalk that nobody uses. So we've gained some more traction and better adoption, but it's way too complex for our end users, right? While they love the idea that they can get to all this detail, nobody really wants to dig into all that detail. And so too many options, too much data, too many slices. And so we've ended up with the long and winding sidewalk instead of the direct path. So based on our user feedback, we're simplifying. And in our latest version of the dashboard, we're more focused on usability, giving users the simple path to the insights and the data they're looking for, rather than too much detail or slicing capability. Still available, but basically that's for our analysts. And we're going to get ready to roll out this version. I've got some previews here to show you next quarter. So we've really, I think we've learned a lot, you know, from our spreadsheet through to our like, wow, look what we can do, isn't this great? To our like, well, what do you really need more than what can we give you? So V3 is about simplification. And so with our new homepage, we're stepping back a little bit and slimming down, right? So there's less information here. We're gearing more toward trending, toward the areas that are more important for folks. We're going to start adding in some costing data and a little bit of gamification. So turnover, here's a great example. So turnover is, as I mentioned, a hot topic for us. And so instead of having tabs at the top, we're guiding the navigation. So basically, we're determining the path. And we use more of a mobile phone type of interface, even though this is for a full-size screen. So you scroll down to get the information. So you see things sequentially, and it kind of makes more sense for people. So there's less data, fewer options, and a clear navigation path. So first you can see there's high-level metrics with trending. Then we've got the cost of turnover. So managers can really get a sense of, okay, what does this mean to my budget? And then you can filter, see the views, and as you scroll down, you get into more detail and maybe a couple of slices, not so many, maybe 2 slices, right? And then at the bottom, you've got the exit survey, so again, following the path of high level what, detail what, and then why. All right. So I want to talk a little bit about our surveys. On the right-hand side, you can see the new navigation for the surveys, and this gives you a sense of what the scroll would look like. And so when we started using ENPS in all of our surveys, we realized people didn't even know what that meant or how to interpret it. So one of the things you can see there is we built in the explanation right into the metric. So that way there's no question, right? It's not buried in some question mark, like let me go look and see what does that mean and how did they calculate it. It's like right there in an image. And so far we've gotten good feedback on that. And I want to talk a little bit about the culture survey. I know there was a section on topic modeling yesterday. So we've built in our topic modeling right into our dashboard. And so you can see this question is, what is the one most important action Western Digital must take to significantly improve our workforce culture? So we structured the question in a way that we would get actionable feedback, right? So that's really important, is when you're asking an open-ended question, make sure that it's not going to be too biased. Make sure that you're going to get the kind of feedback that actually is going to give you the outcome that you're looking for. And then what you can see here is the orange dot is the selected SVP, and they can see how they compare to all the other dots, which are the rest of the SVPs. And so for their org, they can see which topics people are talking about, how it compares, and on the right-hand side is so what percentage, what are the top 3 and the whole list, and then for their org, and then you can click on it and you get to the actual detail of what people said. And we've selected representative comments because in this particular case, there were about 10,000 comments. So we selected representative ones. And so I think this is a good example of how you can apply some of the machine learning principles, but yet present it in a way that it's useful and actionable for people. All right, so next I'm going to talk about our utilization. So we have this very fancy utilization dashboard, and this is one of the things where we're thinking about gamification and about how do we maybe present a leaderboard within our dashboard framework so people can understand how their usage compares to peers, maybe give away a few prizes, and get people into that competitive sense of like, well, what is my peer who I can see how I compare to them? What are they doing with this that maybe I could be doing, or how can I increase my utilization? Oh, and I guess one other thing I wanted to mention on that, let me see if I can go back, is we did hit our target. So this was just pulled a couple of weeks ago. You can see we're at 2,862 users as of, the date's not in there, but it was a few weeks ago. And our target was 2,500, so we hit our target, yay. All right, so what did we learn? So now I want to tell you, you saw sort of our journey, and you saw some of, a couple of screenshots of what things look like. And so now I want to tell you what we learned, and then a couple of tips, right? So I would say adoption. Right? Without good adoption, your best efforts will be fruitless. In order to ensure adoption, work with your business partners, and we've got one of our key business partners here with us today. Thank you for coming. And they're closest to the execs that will benefit from the insights. If they understand, use, and advocate for the dashboards, it's going to be mutually beneficial, right? It's going to benefit their relationship with the executive. It's going to benefit the people analytics team, and also make for that great interface so that there's more information being shared and used. And it's worth spending the time. Tying your dashboards, metrics, and education is key to business processes. It's a great way to build adoption. We partnered with HR to roll out training just before annual compensation review, and we saw a big spike. Actually, you could see that in the bottom of, I can show you where that is. Let me see if I can go back. You see that spike at the end there? That's where the compensation review happened, and where we did the training, and then we got the uptick in utilization. So that was significant. Design is important. Make sure you understand your end users, their concerns, their familiarity with data and metrics, and their preferences. We learned the hard way that more is more, but sometimes less is better. That's my new mantra, right? It's not more is less is more, no. That isn't really it. Sometimes you just want to go with less and not give them the more. This gets back to understanding what they want and need. And data accuracy is critical. We are constantly validating the data in the warehouse. The warehouse is a living, breathing thing. Everything impacts that warehouse, and you've got to have the right support to make sure that as things break, they're getting fixed. Where you have changes, you understand how those changes are impacting your data. Because the worst thing is to have an end user come up to you and say, hey, how come that's wrong? And then you don't want to be caught unawares, right? And the trust in the data is really important. All right, so a couple of tips for success. So link your dashboards and insights to company strategy, ensure adoption. You have to make it relevant to the business. So this is an example of where turnover was a high priority at the board level, at the executive level. We were losing a lot of key people. And so we really focused there to try to surface those insights to help influence policy and practice. And then design your dashboards with the insights you want to convey in mind. That kind of gets back to the last thing I was saying. Really understand what kind of outcome and output you're looking for before you start building, because it's not a build it and they will come. That just doesn't work. Tie into business initiative or something linked to a key executive where there's interest. We've recently focused on a manager effectiveness for a business unit that's funding and piloting a management fundamentals program. So this was great because we were able to launch a survey that helped to guide the content, get baseline understanding of employee sentiment. So there was a real use for that. And then the employees could see how their input really impacted what we were going to provide back to them. Personalization drives adoption. And make sure you're going to communicate in ways your end users relate to. Consider your audience, right? It's not a one-size-fits-all. The manager with 1 or 2 employees, this is not going to be super useful to them. So really think about what you're communicating and who your audience is. And I would say, kind of on the last thing, is use corporate standard tools where possible. Leverage what IT is already investing in, and you're going to get a lot better support than if you go out and say, well, we need this for HR. Oftentimes, these standardized tools, you can get better value out of them than you can from something that's highly dedicated. And make sure you're going to leverage your naysayers and your energizers, really important. And so that's pretty much what I have. In the end, we're transforming from multiple spreadsheets to create a headcount report, to complex set of dashboards, to now much more simplified approach, easier to use, and surfacing insights more easily. So I wish you the best on your journey, and now we can move to questions. So thank you.
Marilyn, that's amazing, because you and your team have just built that yourselves.
Yes, we built that all ourselves. Yes.
And then the survey stuff that you're doing, looking at topics and everything.
Do you know what we're using? Okay, I'm embarrassed to admit this. We're using the survey functionality that comes with Workday. So we trigger it based on actions, and 1 license of SurveyMonkey.
Wow.
Yes.
See what you can do in these teams. It's quite spectacular. So we have a few minutes for questions for the panel. So are there any questions? If you put your hand up. Yes, a couple questions. I thought there might be.
Hi, Marilyn.
Hi.
You spoke about your transformation from spreadsheets to more advanced dashboards. Could you touch a little bit on how you defined some of the complex metrics and whether there was pushback on
the
definitions?
complex metrics? So you want to understand like what metrics we chose and why?
Like you spoke about utilization, but actually defining utilization, was that like a joint decision within the whole team, or was that?
So we had to measure the effectiveness. We put a lot of effort into this, so we had to understand effectiveness. So we started with utilization. We started with, well, let's see how many people are touching this, and let's see what kind of volume we have. And of course, the next thing we want to do is measure effectiveness, which is what are people actually doing with the data and the insights to impact their business. But that's a lot harder to measure. So we started with the easy one.
Thanks. Luke Barnard, I'm from JLL. So Tableau.
Yes,
and
this is Tableau.
Yeah, right. So and you're using Workday as well.
Yes.
So I'm interested in the security model you have behind the scenes and,
Yes.
and how you keep alignment between Workday and Tableau for utilizing row-level security, how you're approaching that.
Yeah, so we don't, it's a custom security model in Tableau Server. We don't use the Workday security for this. So the way that the security is set up is using distribution lists, like in an Active Directory type of thing, right? And then we apply the hierarchy to it. So basically, it's going to run through the hierarchy and say, okay, you can see only people that are below you in the reporting structure. So only subordinates. You can't see peer level or above. For HR, so that's a little more challenging because it's a custom security model. What we've done is we've given access, and pretty broad access, to the HR teams. Workday, so here's the benefit of using a delivered tool. It's going to give you way more security access, like lots of bells and whistles that we're not going to be able to provide, right? So it's always going to be a trade-off on where you're going to spend the money, right? And where are you going to find the value? So what's going to be more of a differentiator for you? Is it going to be more customization to what you're looking for? Or is it going to be, by using some of these components? Yeah.
First of all, thank you very much for sharing your journey and kind of the lessons learned, really insightful. I have a pretty tactical question, and that's regarding the cost of turnover. If you could talk about kind of how did you get to that metric and
the cost of turnover? Yeah, so there was quite a bit of research that went into that. Right, so we took a look at some of the standard measures that people are using. Then we collected all of our workforce data, for salaries and those kind of things, and then we applied it. So I would say we're using a fairly standard measure. Mm-hmm.
Great presentation, and congratulations on the journey. I'm wondering what's next for you. So are you going to do more dashboards, giving them to different people? Are you going to, where are you going to go from there?
So we do a lot of different things on our team. I think a couple of things. One is this continuous listening journey, building that out to be much more robust. That's a key thing for us. Another thing is we're working on quite a bit of active ONA, so really understanding the networks and understanding how that links back to some key measures. So we're doing some work there. I would say as far as our dashboards, it's about getting more to the insights, right? So the data's surfaced, but it's like, how do you build out the insights? So we're leaning more toward customization and providing quarterly decks to the SVPs and the business partners so that they can say, all right, well, this is what I need to focus on in my organization, right? And then dig in. So really getting to the insights, and we were talking about this over lunch. It was this thing about, well, if machine learning can't really help you get to, it can surface okay, here's something that's happening. It can tell you the exception, or it can tell you where things are trending or correlations, but it can't really tell you what the insight is and what to do with it. So that's really kind of the next step. And we haven't found a way to do that in an automated way. So we're sort of leaning toward well, let's do a little bit of customization here. Yeah.
Quick question for me, Marilyn. So some of the people in the audience might be thinking, do we build something like you've done, or do we buy it? And obviously there's no right answer. It really depends on the organisation, I think.
That's right.
What was the decisions that made you go for a build versus a buy, though? It'd be interesting.
Well, so I was fortunate enough to be able to build a really talented team. And so for me, it was easier to get the headcount and the headcount that I needed than it was to spend money on an external tool. So I think that's going to really vary. I think if you have a really data-savvy team with the right data science skills and the right sort of data visualization skills, then building your own, and you have IT support for a warehouse, building your own is a great way to go. I think if you've got a really small team and you haven't got that skill set, then buying something, in the end, it's probably a wash. There are benefits to some and benefits to others, but it's really going to depend on your organization as to what's going to be the best approach.
And as you said, if you do decide to build, leverage the assets that you've got across the company.
Yeah, absolutely. Because honestly, there are some tools are going to be better than others, but you can make pretty much any corporate standard tool work for you.
Brilliant. I think we'll time for one more question. Just about, because Al's done so well keeping on time. I don't want to be yeah, we have got time for one more.
Hi, I'm Danielle. I'm with Livongo, and I think we're at V2 of where your dashboards are, with a small team of 2 people analysts. So my question is, do you have any examples of goal setting or behavioral change that you've seen at the leadership level as a result of introducing these dashboards?
So I would say that because our company is these 3 companies coming together, we're a little bit behind the curve in terms of goals and performance management and that type of piece. So it's been really challenging for us to get to that type of data. I will say I'm pretty excited about one change that is taking place now based on some organizational network analysis that we've done. And that is the formation of specific teams to solve problems. So they've got some teams forming that are around specific task areas in the engineering, one of the engineering orgs, and they're using the O&A data to really see who are those key connectors and who are those people I want to bring together, or where they have teams formed, they're looking at the networks to see, are these the right people on the team? So I would say that's probably at the moment the most exciting thing that we've seen in terms of getting to a real result.
Marilyn, thank you very much. Very, very impressive work. Thank you.